We investigate the BBC with Paul Thorpe, Formex have a baby, Reef, Grand Seiko shine brightly, and Greubel Forsey finally reveal their secret entry-level watch. All this and more on today's show. Welcome to the Scottish Watches podcast. Dave's still across in Switzerland. I'm starting to feel sorry for him. He actually looks like a Bond villain, and I know I'm the one that kinda more looks like a Bond villain generally, but with that top and that background, Dave, yeah, you're going to be a festive favourite, I can tell.
I can make myself look more like a Bond baddie. I'll put my new glasses on.
Now you look like an extra from Team America or Joe 90, or a combination of the two. But anyway, we're here to talk about watches, not about festive treats, because you're going to have plenty of them coming in your ears and all over your face, as Dave said in the last edition, over the coming weeks. We're off to Switzerland, and when I say we, I mean I, because Dave is already there. He's staying put. We're going to catch up with him. Me and Adrian are coming across. We're going to be doing some cool things with folks at IWC, Hot Launch, and Moser, so stay tuned for that. But the first thing to talk about, as I said, is a new Baby Reef, not a queef, as Dave would like to say, and this is from our friends at Formex, the guys that bring you economically priced, high-quality wristwear, where you get all this extra functionality added in. We've said this before, behind the scenes, they're the guys that create really funky tech. It could be strap technology, suspension systems, snapping on and off bezels so you can change the look of your watch on the fly, and they brought out a watch that's already quite chunky, and they've reduced it in size somewhat. So this isn't the hunky gorilla, this is a chimpanzee model. And we've got our own resident chimp to talk about it, Dave. Hit us with it.
Oh, that'll be me then. Indeed. So Raf has been busy with his colleagues at Formex. I think listening to what the market was saying, obviously the Reef is, I think it's fair to say, one of the fan favourites from within the kind of range of watches that Formex have. Lots of little funky things about it. You can pop the bezel off, as you mentioned. They've got the GMT versions, the dive versions. That 22mm lug means you've got a plethora of straps, bracelets, clasps, all sorts of stuff you can fit to it to change it up. Whether you've got ceramic bezels, alloy bezels, whatever, you can really mess around with it. But at 42mm, it's not the smallest watch in the world, and there's always been a bit of a demand for something smaller, and indeed it appears that they have brought it to life. But they've not just made everything a little bit smaller. The more you look into this, it's quite interesting what they've done in terms of trying to maintain access to their huge catalogue of customization parts. So it's smaller, 39mm. Doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a huge difference for a lot of people if you've got a smaller wrist. But they've maintained the 22mm lug width, which means that effectively all the bracelets, straps, etc. that you can get for the original model will also fit this model. So that means if you've got the bigger model and you fancy the small one, or if you just like that range of parts, you've got access to them. You still have that removable, replaceable, changeable bezel, albeit they're not compatible with each other for the two sizes for obvious reasons. 39mm, 42mm, one does not go into two. Well, it does, but it doesn't in this case. Anyway, outside of that, everything you would expect from the watch. They've even managed to bring the thickness down fractionally, albeit because it's based around a COSC certified Sellita movement in there, you're kind of stuck with the movement in terms of, thickness. So although you can reduce the diameter a little, you can only bring the thickness down so much because the movement is what the movement is. But that's not to say it's a bad movement. COSC certified, which is the top of the range, so you've got great accuracy in there. Altogether, this is a cool looking watch. It comes in terms of price at a range of prices. It depends how you spec it. If you go for the bracelet, you're at the upper end of the price range. If you go for a more basic strap, you're at the bottom end. You can order it on NATOs, rubbers, leathers, and right through to the bracelet. I think from memory, round about the £1,600 through to the £1,800 mark, depending on what you're after. So yeah, I think this is a great looking watch, and it's probably going to make a lot of people very happy who loved the idea of the original but couldn't bring themselves to buy a 42. So all in all, I think this is a victory from the guys at Formex, which goes along with many other victories they've had recently.
Long-term listeners and newer viewers will know that I absolutely love Formex, not just because every time we meet up with Raf and Marcus, we go out and we have a great time, great food, great steaks, but the products that they put out are very economically friendly, and being a tight Scotsman, that's something that is very key to my horological hobby. I have seen so many Formex releases over the past 3 years I've been working with the company. The Reef, the Essence, the Ligera, the Carbon, the Space Rock, with the Gamma Ray, with the Malachites, and all these other ones, including the really funky, low-priced field watch that they brought out a couple of years ago that had the purple and titanium for around about $800, which was insane. This is playing to a market. There's more and more people looking for smaller watches. The Reef has always been quite chunky. It has got the Nautilus look where you've got the crown guards on one side, and then for symmetry you have something bulbous on the opposite side. That obviously makes things a little bit larger to wear, but this time around it is just a little bit more, what would you say, wrist friendly. Better for the other genders. There are many genders out there. This one is for everybody. Shall we say that? Would that keep us right, Dave?
I think that'll keep us right. And I think it's fair to say as well, I was sceptical at first. The whole keep the 22mm lug width on a 39 watch, I thought, is this going to be out of proportion? But actually, it seems to be pretty much bang on where you want it to be. So I think they've pulled off a bit of a blinder here, maintaining that access to that massive back catalogue of options whilst giving folk what they want, i.e. a slightly smaller watch. So yeah, it's a win. And yes, I think you're right with the, what will we call it, Ricky? Politically correct language.
So there you go, the latest and greatest from Formex. We did say recently that the Malachites were coming back into stock. They only have capabilities to produce a certain number of these per year, and Raf had been in touch about a month ago to say that the next batch had appeared. Obviously, Barbara Plumbo is a massive fan of the Malachite. I have one myself. I try to wear it as often as possible, but there are so many watches that come in for review, you know what it's like. But we should probably move on and do the wrist checks. But before that, we're going to tell you to play along at home. Check the show notes, click the link in your podcast player. That'll take you to the specific page that is designated for this episode. And if you're watching us on YouTube, click the link in the description and it will do the same. There you'll see all the pictures, text spec, links, all that good stuff that Miziel will put in, and he will reduce the amount of errors he has promised me over the festive period, because it's going to be hard enough reading Miziel stuff at the best of times, and if you had a little tipple, it's going to be even harder, because we even had Brian from Ireland commenting on his spelling mistakes, not Brian's spelling mistakes, Mrs. in this episode. So he's going to be doing better, but he's feeling a little under the weather, so get well soon, Miz. You've got a lot of work to do, son. Now, wrist check time, and I'm not going to go first because I am busy trying to adapt a bracelet. It is a little bit big, so I'm taking 14,000 links out of the thing. So Dave, for once, you can go first.
Ricky is doing, if you're watching this on YouTube that is, you may get a little clip of what he was doing the last time we were recording as well, which was actively trying to resize a freshly delivered watch whilst we were actually recording. So whilst he bashes away his little hammer and makes funny noises, he might even squeak if we're lucky, I will tell you what I'm wearing. And, I tried to do the not wearing at a rage, but unfortunately today, the only watch I picked up was an Arage, so I'm not going to spend too much time in it. I am wearing my prototype Super Seed GMT. That's it. I'll give you a quick picture. This is what I'm wearing, the grey dial prototype of the GMT. I kind of love this watch, actually. I wasn't sure I was going to love a grey dial, but I really do love it. And of course, it's me, so therefore it has a bright orange rubber strap on it. Not much more to say in this other than we love it. Therefore, that's all I'm wearing. Am I going to get Ricky? Has he done it? Has he not done it? I'm going to throw it back at him. He's doing shaky head things. So if you're listening, I'm describing his actions, which is shaking of head and vicious pulling of tools. But other than that, oh, he's having a giggle. He's not sure. This is quite good fun, this, actually. The video, he's now, he's got the twiddly thumb action on there. If he's even got a wee smile on his face, I think he's really touching the right spot. It's going to fall apart though if he's not careful. As your mothers used to say, if you play with tools too much, sometimes you do damage. So that's my wrist check. Finally, after an interlude, it's like one of those time shift things, Ricky has managed to adjust the bracelet. Whether he's adjusted it properly or to the right size is a completely different story. But Ricky, what are you wearing stroke resizing as we speak live on this recording?
Well, it turns out, dear listeners, dear viewers, that I have made an arse of this. As we can see, if you're watching a YouTube video, this is still hanging out the side, and I have taken one link too many out of this. But today I would have been wearing, and I am going to desk check, not wrist check, a watch that gets sent to us a couple of months ago, and it has sat in the inbox at the storage department because we've not had a chance to get to it yet, hence the tools, hence me trying to barbarically put this on my wrist today. But this is from an Italian brand that we met back in January at Vicenza Oro when I was across there with Barbara Plumbo on my first trip to the event, and this is a brand called Fathers. Very interesting name. I don't know what the reason was behind it, but I will be in touch with the brand to find out more. And they had a selection of different watches at different price points in different colourways. And this was at a point where me and Dave were constantly talking about me looking to get a white ceramic bezeled watch. And this one was here. The only slight downside, being a hot-blooded male, is that it does have pink colorations on it. So some people might like that, some people won't like that. Certain females that I may be in relationships with, and that is one, Simona, actually really does like this one. And the reason is, it's not just cool of colour, it is actually a really well put together watch. So let me run through the spec with you. So the first thing we should probably do is tell you the name of it, and this is called the Silver Rose. It's on a stainless steel bracelet, and it is limited edition. Not sure how many, because they didn't tell me, but this is among one of their probably most popular designs, they say. They do a different range of them, and I can see why. As I was brutally trying to alter the bracelet and remove links, apart from this part here that I've not actually fixed yet, I think I've put it in the wrong side, I'll fix that later on, I noticed that the links have got a really nice chamfered edge. There's no sharp parts to it whatsoever. On the case back, it has got a really cool, funky design that sits well against the wrist, and I know that because I actually tried different variations of this on when I was over there in January. Looking at the dial, it's hard to tell on the camera, it's easier to tell in real life and better in the pictures, but it's not a flat glossy dial, it's not matte. It also has a strange, almost a checker plate design on it. Each of the indexes are raised and slide towards the centre. Each of the indexes are applied, they're not actually printed there, and they all have a slant towards the centre so they catch light as you're looking down upon it. Inside, you've got a Solita beating away, as you would expect from a Swiss-made watch, although it is of Italian origins, and it has got an anti-reflective flat sapphire on the front. We're looking at healthy doses of Superluminova, and you get quite a lot in the package, along with the watch itself. So this isn't blue suede shoes, this is a blue suede watch box, and inside you get all the documentation that you would expect. You get the warranty card, not in English, unfortunately. In English on the other side. You get a nice little wallet that's also got that embossing logo that you featured on the dial and also on the case back, and everything that you'd want in there, including the father's logo on the inside of the box. So a great little presentation. We should probably talk about price point because that's probably what you're interested in. So let's pretend for a second that this is not cutting off the circulation to my bulbous hand as we speak. And the price point, Dave, because you checked the website as I was trying to get this on the wrist,
is 1,310 of your finest English pounds, which is on their website. So I am assuming that is a translation directly from the euro price, which is probably going to be €13.99. So yeah, really good value package here. Again, in the same kind of sphere as Formex and many of our other favourite brands, offering a Swiss-made watch with a quality movement in it. A little bit different again. We've talked a few times this last few episodes about watches that are not overly expensive but aren't direct homages or copies of something else. This again has a little bit of uniqueness in its own way. I quite like that pink coloration on there. I know you probably would prefer it to be red, but yeah, I think that kind of pinky red colour on there looks mighty fetching. Maybe clashes a little with that horrifically red and green Christmas jumper, but nonetheless very festive.
I actually think it suits the Christmas jumper. I'm going to very carefully try and get this back off the wrist because otherwise this is a hospital visit. Oh, that feels better. Oh, there we go. Yes, I made a complete arse of this. So apologies. Apologies to everybody.
Was that a little bit of light wrist relief there, Ricky? Oh, look at that relief of the wrist.
So it is a great watch. I have done it a massive disservice, and if you think pink is the only colour it's available in, you are mistaken. If you check out the website, they have a whole load of different colourways. I picked the pink and the white to see what it would be like because we've not had a pink and white watch in before. And it doesn't compare to loads and loads of other things that are out there. And when I caught up with the guys in Italy, when I've spoken to them since then, they've got a really good, they've got a good understanding of the industry. Again, a little bit like Estroworks from last episode. I get the feeling they've done a lot behind the scenes with other watch creators and watch brands because they're fairly new, but it is not an immature product. It is definitely well executed and it ticks all the boxes, as we like to say on the show. So check out the show notes, have a look at that, and if you like what you see, go and grab one.
Absolutely. And as you mentioned, there are lots of colours. I was having a little browse when I was looking at the price for Ricky there because he had forgotten to check it out. But there's a lovely green looking one there. I like the look of that. So yes, check out the show notes for the link and have a look yourself. See if anything takes your fancy. So other than that, Ricky, I suppose I should ask you, have you been up to anything exciting since I last last spoke and heard your dulcet tones?
Well, it wasn't long ago that we did speak because we were having to record episodes in a quick manner as we were away to Schaffhausen, but I caught up with a couple of things on YouTube. I was going to talk about some films, but I've not had a chance to do any notes on that because I forgot we're recording today. And those things on YouTube include, and I think this was the last ever thing recorded and produced with Ken Block, and that's the Hoonigan series that he launched in 2008, and the latest and the last, obviously, because he passed away earlier this year. Of the Hoonigan series is him in his electrified Audi. And if you'd seen the one from the previous year at Las Vegas, this one is equally as good. I believe it's shot down in Mexico and it was put together before he passed away. And just seeing what this guy could do behind the steering wheel of a car is incredible. And he was getting on in age. He wasn't a teenager, he wasn't in his 20s. I think he was in his early 50s at the point he passed. And just seeing him careering around, causing absolute vehicular mayhem with this, I don't even know what you would call it. It's like a large electric remote control car. Because at one point he had the front wheels spinning forward and the back wheels spinning in reverse. So the car was going nowhere. It was doing an on-the-spot burnout with all the wheels producing smoke. It was just incredible, and I'm a big kid at heart, loved watching that. And speaking of being a big kid, accidentally came across something else on YouTube, and it was the complete history and behind the scenes of Who Framed Roger Rabbit. That's a movie I loved when I was a kid. Remember going to see it in the cinema, and it didn't make much sense to me, never caught the adult overtones, but watching it as an adult later on in life, there are so many nuances that you don't quite pick up on that you do on a second or third viewing. And behind the scenes, this was a terrible movie to put together. Went through so many rewrites, different studios. Disney were interested, then they weren't. And the way that they produced it with the live action, Bob Hoskins, Christopher Lloyd, and the cartoon characters, it led on to things like Andy Serkis doing Lord of the Rings and things like that, where you have the actors, a green screen, and then the CGI is added in later. This is where it all started. So if you like the movie or you like the behind the scenes stuff, definitely recommend it, and the links will be in the show notes. So Dave, what have you been up to since you've been stuck in Switzerland again?
What have I been up to? I've had a bit of a deep dive, it has to be said, on YouTube as well, because unfortunately most of the streaming services that I use, BBC, iPlayer, all the others, sometimes they're a bit more awkward to access when you're not in your own. I have actually remembered I had a VPN on my computer, therefore I could have just done that, but hindsight is a great thing. So I just spent some time trawling around the joy that is YouTube. Sometimes it's good, sometimes not so good. Tended to avoid most of the watch content, to be honest, because we get enough of that, but found some interesting little things. I caught up on a few of the episodes of the joy that is the Secrets of the Motorway series, which I know you enjoy as well, Ricky. This guy knows how to do it. Check out the show notes for links. It is the driest topic you could possibly imagine, that being the grey, boring motorways of the UK, but this guy manages to present some of the secrets of the motorway in a very funny and very sarcastic manner. So if you want something to amuse you, they only last a few minutes and they're super good. Other than that, lots of work stuff on. I've got another live cast with work coming up later on after this recording. A few things we're going to be announcing there, so we're getting prepared for that. And it's Christmas time in Switzerland, so there's snow, it's cold, and there are Christmas markets. So I have been consuming a lot of Glühwein as well, which is pretty nice. And they have got some strange traditions, like the 6th of December is a day where they make strange looking cakes that look like little people that are a bit deformed, and they eat them because apparently St. Nicholas comes and treats the kiddies at that time of year. Other than that, not a whole lot. Maybe we should just get on with what's happening.
Well, I forgot to say when we're talking about what we've been up to, one of the big things I've been up to in the last couple of days, and it was yesterday, I did a live video recording and then it got edited, so it's probably not as live as I thought it was, but it was a live video recording with Paul Thorpe. We talked about in our last episode together that the BBC had put out an article that was really good. I enjoyed reading it. There was a lot of information in it, and I said on the show, it sounded like me, Dave, and Paul Thorpe having a chat. It was all the information we give you about security, looking after yourself, avoiding dodgy places, including London, and there was a link to a video that was in there on iPlayer. And I hadn't had the chance to view it at the point in time we recorded the podcast. Dave couldn't view it because he's in Switzerland and his VPN is not that great. He should try Tor. But I did catch up later on and I did watch the video. And as I'm watching it, it kind of got worse and worse as it went on. And I had the feeling that there was something behind the scenes that I wasn't quite figuring out. It just didn't sit right. So I immediately sent a message to Paul Thorpe on WhatsApp and I said, what do you think of this? do you think it's fake? And he immediately got back to me and said, I have a story. We should have a chat. We should actually do a recording about it. So we jumped onto a live stream, recorded it yesterday. He then repurposed it, put it on YouTube, and I'm going to include some of that audio content in a couple of seconds. But he explained that he was actually an uncredited consultant, where the BBC, in particular the reporter that was creating the article and the news item, she'd been in touch with him since the summer of this year, asking all kinds of questions, sending pictures of different watches, saying how much would this be worth in the secondary market, how much would that be worth, and just getting lots of information together, almost building a script. And he's provided lots of information. He put a shout out on his channels looking for people that had been the victims of thefts to come forward to feature in the show. Nobody seemed interested for obvious reasons. And then the episode came out. And there was a lot of things in it that he was not happy with. There was a lot of things in it that I thought, this doesn't ring true. If somebody was genuinely a watch thief to this level, then they wouldn't be appearing on TV, masked, unmasked, or the way that it was actually masked on the BBC. You could tell who everybody was pretty much. Then there was some guns involved, machetes involved, knives. It just did not sit with me. I have seen enough, speaking to the police, I've seen enough videos and news reports on how watch crime works to think this is not quite right. So we're now going to go to Paul explaining all.
So after the BBC released a documentary entitled Hunting the Rolex Rippers, I'll leave a link in the video description below if you haven't seen it, I felt an urgent need to reply and have my say and to tell you why I was so disappointed with it and how the BBC used me to get exactly what they felt they needed and used my experience to produce, unfortunately, something that I felt was nothing much more than a fictional drama rather than a real-world documentary that could genuinely have helped expose and resolve the real-world watch crime problem. I think you're going to find this one very interesting. And joining me today to discuss the show is someone else who watched it with great interest. That's my good friend Ricky from the world-renowned podcast Scottish Watches. Good afternoon, Ricky. How you doing, mate?
So, interesting take there on everything. I've not actually seen it yet because, as mentioned, I'm stuck in Switzerland and I can't access the BBC iPlayer, but I will be watching it when I get back, and maybe in a future episode I can throw my tuppence worth in to see what they're saying. I've read the article, like you, Ricky. The article I think came across pretty well, so it'll be interesting to see if maybe a little bit of dramatisation was being courted in that production on the television. But there we go, lots of things to say. The most important thing though to remember is, regardless of the background or content of that, the rule is still there. Watch crime is a thing. Be careful. We keep saying it. It is Christmas time. Lots of you'll be out in the town. Your guard will be down. You'll have a few drinks. You'll be with your friends. You think you're safe. But I'm not saying you won't be safe. Just think twice before you put a nice watch in your wrist if you're going out drinking. Other than that, then yeah, you can all make up your own mind as to what the whole scenario there is.
And you can also make up your own mind what you think of the latest and greatest from Grand Seiko. Now, we've not really spoken about Grand Seiko in a couple of months, which is odd because usually they cover all the 22 or 24 seasons that they have in Japan with new releases that are inspired by XYZ. This time around, I am really liking these dials, these colours. They're not muted, they're not pastel shades, they're not the usual fare from Grand Seiko where, it's almost held back slightly. These ones are punchy, they're in your face, they could be from Hublot, they could be from AP. And Dave, you are the Grand Seiko master, so why don't you tell us all about these?
Absolutely. So what we have here is a set of 3 watches that Grand Seiko have done as an exclusive, available through the Watches of Switzerland group in the UK, who are one of their premium partners. Now, they've taken, as you would expect from Grand Seiko, a bit of a theme from nature, that being Miyako Bay, which is an area of outstanding natural beauty in Japan. White volcanic rocks, beautiful sunsets, seaside, all the things that you would expect in a beautiful scene. And their designers have taken inspiration. We have a dark grey dial with little blue highlights. We have a green dial, and my favourite, shock horror, is the purple dial. So taking theme from the scenes, from the sunsets, from the kind of ambience and atmosphere, these are quite down-toned when it comes to the cases. The cases have the Zaratsu polishing, so everyone loves a little bit of Zaratsu, nice and shiny, but it's the dials that very much do the talking on these Grand Seikos, as so often is the case with Grand Seiko. Each of these three models available for 6,300 of your pounds. Unfortunately, if you're not near a Watches of Switzerland, then your luck is out because they are only available via that retailer. I'm sure though they'll also be on their website. If any of these colours take your fancy, the watch is based as a bit of an homage to the original automatic self-winding watch from Grand Seiko, then I wouldn't hang around. 2 of them are limited edition. Check out the show notes. I've already even had a friend of mine in London message me to say, what do you think? And he's been in already to try them on. And I said to him the same, and he agrees the purple is the winner of the set of 3. So yes, lovely looking little set. Very much Grand Seiko. If it's your thing, you know where to go.
These are absolute wins, and I'm gutted for everybody that's going to look at the pictures and think, this is the one. This is the Grand Seiko that I want. And they're not near a Watches of Switzerland, or they're not in a country that is furnished by Watches of Switzerland and have stock of this. Each of them look great, and I know that there's a grey coloured one in there, there's a purple, there's a green. I would go for the green. It's like the acid green colour that certain Porsche cars come in, certain calipers come in. It is completely not what Grand Seiko would usually do. They have totally thrown out the rule book with this one, and I'm loving it so much. Would I buy it myself? I would. I genuinely would. I think it comes in around about £6,000. You may have mentioned that. I wasn't paying attention because you don't even pay attention. You don't even know what guests we've got on the show and we've already had out. But no, I really like it. And yeah, good things from Grand Seiko. Looking forward to what comes out in 2024. And maybe in 2024, a whole batch of watches might get released from where they are currently in custody, Dave.
Indeed, news of one of the big auctions of the year that took place with Christie's in Geneva, where a single individual sold their entire watch collection, is one lot. I say one lot, obviously each watch was separate, but the entire auction was just of this individual's watches, and it made a record sum of money. I believe 47 million in that area, so we're talking lots of money, and there were some very notable watches in there, including a Rolex worn by Marlon Brando in Apocalypse Now, a watch that has come for auction a few times in the last years and has accrued some big numbers. It got an even bigger number. Back to the start, keeping it short and sweet though. The auction was going ahead, as usual. Everyone had congregated for the auction. There was the book, there was the minimums, there was all of the kind of reserves, and suddenly the auction didn't start on time. It started around 20 minutes to 30 minutes late, and all of those reserves had been moved upwards considerably at the last minute, which did raise a few eyebrows, it has to be said, but nonetheless, the auction went ahead, and a very specific paddle number seemed to be winning an awful lot of the lots. Turns out someone was effectively underwriting it, and unless they made those new low reserves, the watches were being sold to this individual. After the fact, lots of folk were happy. Roger Smith, he was super happy because a Millennium piece from his work back with George Daniels had fetched a mighty sum. Obviously the Rolex had also hit unheard of highs for that watch. So therefore everyone seemed happy, except apparently the person that consigned the watches. He decided he was not so happy about it, and it turns out now that he's gone to court in Geneva, and all the watches have been demanded by the court to be held in escrow and cannot be released because it appears that there might be some underhand dealings. Not quite sure, because no one's really sure who or what's going on here, but it appears the individual that consigned the watches is saying that there was illegal or some immoral undue pressures applied, which is a bit strange considering he consigned them. But anyway, it remains to be seen how this pans out. Christie's seem to be very much against the owner or the consignee of these watches. They're not happy about it. He wants his watches back. There's now also stories, some of them in the press, check out the show notes for some links, of others saying that maybe some other auction houses might be sticking their oar in the water at this point as well. So who knows, I'm sure it will all come out in the courts, but a messy situation for what looked to be one of the few big auctions this year that seemed to go off, relatively speaking, without a hitch, other than that little delay at the start, and attained some big values. Some other auctions this year have attained much lower values than we've seen over the last few years, but this one was the big hitter. So who knows what the real story is? Will we ever find out? Probably not, to be honest, because it's a bit secretive and elusive, the whole auction thing, but it makes for some juicy reading, so let's see what happens over the coming weeks on that one.
Are we ever going to have a month where the auction world doesn't f things up royally? I wonder. This has been a hell of a year.
Oh yes, Ricky. I mean, I think actually someone close to us might have held an auction, possibly, and it seemed to go off without a hitch, and everyone seemed happy. But the bigger ones, something about it only didn't happen. Don't know what happened there, though.
Yeah, I mean, Every Watch did really, really well. We'll have to revisit that again. It's very interesting as well. Every Watch, that was a name that we came up with for the charity watch auction that Sarah had. Well, it was her idea. She came up with it. I think it was me that came up with the name. And we were speaking with Mike France, and this was a couple of years ago before the auction happened, when we were doing our Highlander watch. And we sounded them out on the idea of getting involved in it. And they said, oh, that name, I've actually got the trademark. Christopher Ward have got the trademark for Every Watch. And I thought, oh shit. But then he said, don't worry, you can use it, it's fine. And then a couple of months ago, another Every Watch kind of entity just sprang from nowhere, because I had spotted that the everywatch.com website had been sitting vacant up until a few months ago. Then this strange organisation of folks appeared. They emailed, they wanted to do a podcast, and then they never really got back to us. They appeared at different places, so very strange, but we'll be sticking to our guns. And if Mike says it's okay, we'll still be using that name going forward, because we generated a lot of cash. And the guys at Oracle Time actually did us a solid, and they featured us in the latest edition, which you should check out, either online or in print. But we should probably now, Dave, talk about something that we got to see in a convenience store in Dubai, on the wrist of a prior guest to the show who swore us to secrecy, even though we were allowed to take a couple of wrist shots. And this was the bargain basement Greubel Forsey. And when I say that, I am saying that compared to the normal price and the normal spec of a Greubel Forsey. But this one is something special, and it is my favourite. The colours are amazing, it looks fantastic. I'll never be able to afford it, but we can all dream, and it is Christmas. And maybe Santa will empty his sack for me and give me one of these.
Absolutely. In fact, we saw it before then, if you remember, back at Geneva Watch Days, albeit maybe I think only in images as opposed to the real thing, and we were absolutely sworn to secrecy. Then, as you mentioned, and we've talked about before, we bumbled into an individual from Greubel Forsey who happened to be wearing it on his wrist very nonchalantly, and we did a bit of swapping of very expensive watches while standing at the cash registers of a small supermarket in Dubai. We got some pictures. Check out the show notes, because finally we'll be able to show those pictures. I have a few on my phone that I've been desperate to show but couldn't. It makes a change. I actually have some photos. Yes, Miziel, I will send them to you. And this is Greubel Forsey's move into what they call the lower end of the market for Greubel Forsey. It's not an inexpensive watch. For Greubel Forsey, we're used to seeing price tickets of 300, 400, 500,000 and more. This one comes in significantly under 200,000, nearer the 160,000 mark, which still makes it a very expensive watch in everybody's world. But compared to what you're used to being quoted for Greubel Forsey, very much in the entry level for them. They've taken it, they've simplified what is one of the coolest watches in the market, in my opinion, that being the GMT that they do with this kind of sports case. Very fluid, flowing, curves to the wrist, super complicated shapes in terms of the sapphire glass. An amazing blue colourway on this one. That's the one I love the most. There's actually two colourways, super simple. There's blue or there's black. The blue one, though, is the killer colourway. Blue rubber textile strap on there, really nice deploying clasp. Everything you could possibly want from the aesthetic and look of Greubel Forsey. It is just a time watch, so no fancy complications, no fancy flying tourbillons and whiz-bang going on this one as well, but it is a Greubel Forsey nonetheless. You wouldn't even mistake it for anything else. It's an amazing watch, and it brings Greubel Forsey into the, oh my god, how expensive, I could buy a house for it. But maybe if I was to sacrifice everything in my life, including my legs and kidneys and liver, I might actually be able to buy one. Whereas for most of their wares, even selling every organ you have in your body, will probably still only pay the deposit. You love this watch as well, Ricky. Blue or black for you?
Obviously blue, Dave, come on. I love it. I absolutely love it. I could never... Well, this is wrong. I had the chat with Simona about this, and at what point would your income level and your asset accruement enable you to buy something like this? And I'd said to her, even if I was making millions a year running like a successful dental practice or law firm or selling fake boobies to people, something like that, I don't know. I don't know if personally I could do that. But then again, 5-6 years ago, I never thought I would spend 25 grand on a white gold Daytona that stays in a safety deposit box, if anybody in London's watching this. I don't know. The goalposts keep moving. When I was a bit younger, I thought spending 700 or 800 quid on a tag watch was incredible. And it kind of moves. And I think me and you, as much as we constantly talk about watches, we try on all kinds of stuff. Jacob & Co, as we had a look at the Louis Vuittons that are $4 million in the secondary market. We've never really lost the fact, and this was highlighted recently, that we seem to love everything from 25 quid Casios right the way up. And we will wear crazy stuff, and we'll wear really inexpensive stuff. I mean, you wear your Joker, you wear your Orages, you wear your Grand Seikos, and you wear G-Shocks, and really, really inexpensive stuff. Same here. So price point doesn't matter. If you can afford it, if you love it, buy it. And I believe with Greubel Forsey, when you actually buy one of these watches, you never lose your shirt. It's not like you immediately move the decimal point like some Swiss brands that if you buy new, it's difficult to sell on because they make so few numbers. If somebody does buy this and they look to pass on, there's going to be a collector with their hands and their checkbook ready.
Absolutely, and whilst this is their entry-level offering, they are still limited edition. There's only 88 pieces of each, and on the basis that even when they do small limited runs of their super high-end, they don't tend to last too long either. So me feels that these 88 of the blue and 88 of the black are not going to hang about too long. So maybe that solves the question for us. Would we, could we, should we? Probably not to most of those questions, but probably not because they're not even going to be available. I'm sure they will have sold out from the moment that they were announced. But yeah, super nice, super cool. Great to see them actually understanding that they have to adapt their model to survive ultimately in the real world, because there's only so many people can afford a watch at $500,000. There are a few more who can afford a watch at 160,000, albeit still not a huge pool to play in, but good on them, and it's a great looking watch. Sometimes people might think when you do a light version of what you normally do, it's a bit meh and a bit not so good as the real one. I think in this watch's case, it's one of the best looking watches of the entire range that they do, and that's irrespective of price. All the things you expect from Greubel Forsey are in the mix.
I suppose this is like their Porsche Cayman versus the 911. You know, the Cayman's a good looking car, otherwise I wouldn't have bought one. The 911's great as well, but there is a price difference. No, they're doing great things. Love catching up with them. Love when we had them on the show over a year ago. Mizzy will put that episode in the show notes. And because they're redeveloping where they're based, their factory, their atelier, their showroom, etc., we'd hoped to travel across this year to actually see them in person, but we're going to have to do that next year. So once we get back from Schaffhausen, we're going to be planning our schedule and our diaries for 2024. Watches and Wonders round the corner, then it'll be Geneva Watch Days, and then it'll be Horology Forum, plus lots of different things. I was looking at my bookings for this year, and I think every single month I was at something across the world, some watch event, some gathering, some meetup, or a launch, some kind of product launch somewhere. And I think next year is going to be just as busy, but I'm going to try and not travel as much and get more done here, because it absolutely ruined me this year. And the same with you, Dave, you're backing forward to Switzerland all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. My not that old passport is looking rather tatty round the corners, and it's getting very full. So yeah, lots of travelling, and neither of us, albeit me slightly more than you, neither of us are getting any younger. I am vastly getting tired from the travelling, but it's great fun. It's not to say that we don't appreciate it. We love being out there. We love meeting people, meeting brands, talking to people, doing the interviews, but it does take a toll, it has to be said. It's not quite as sexy as you think, jumping on and off planes around Europe and around the world. And I don't want to sound ungrateful for it, but yeah, as you mentioned, towards the end of the year, you begin to think, oh, okay, take a breath. But, you know, we'll get some amazing content for you nonetheless, and we just need to be a bit more thoughtful about how we join up our travel.
Indeed. That's the end of our show, so check out the show notes, all the links will be in there if Miz remembers, and you can go through the back catalogue. In recent times we have had Barbara Palumbo on the show, talking about her experiences of travelling internationally. We had Adrian doing the same thing. We've had lots of cool brands on, and we've got a couple of sneaky ones to deliver to you just before the end of this year. Then we're going to have our 2023 recap edition, which always comes out towards the tail end, and before you know it, it'll be January, we'll be celebrating our 6th birthday. And we might have some cool guests on to talk on that one as well. So yep, check out the show note, check out the back catalogue, check out the YouTube, because we're starting to put more and more episodes on there. Gav has been busy working away behind the scenes, catching up on the interview shows that we've done over the past 6 months, so you definitely want to subscribe there. And that is it. So thanks for listening, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you guys again soon.